Gear Patrol calls their new dive watch the best sub-$500 dive watch. Full stop. Men's Health rated them as the most stylish solar watch in the game. Who are we talking about? It's Movement. They're leveling up your gift giving with the sleekest watches you can buy and the biggest deals of the season. Shop 30 to 50% off Movement's innovative California clean watches, jewelry, and accessories with fast free shipping and returns now at mvmt.com. That's mvmt.com.
This is a More Than Just podcast production.
Welcome to Spotcast Season 4, Episode 12. My name is Tim Mitra. I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined once again by Jonathan Kuline in Mr. and Mississauga, Ontario.
Hello there.
And we also are joined by the home of the Kraken, Jaime Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
Are you cracking? Jaime?
Cracking. Waiting for October 12th. Taking on the Vegas Golden Knights. The season opener and then home opener is the 23rd of October against Vancouver.
I thought in the spirit of your new favorite sporting franchise, I was thinking, if Jaime's going to get himself a jersey, what could he get on the jersey? Sometimes you get a player name and number, sometimes you just leave it blank. And then I saw who was the star of the first preseason game for the Kraken, and I was like, that's it. That's the winner.
Who's that?
His name is Geeky. Geekie, Geeky. And I was like, that kind of fits us, I think that works.
That's a good one. It's a really good one. It's on point.
I actually looked at the t-shirts and stuff. I like the little S thing. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, their logos. I really like the home ones. I'm not as wild about the whites, but I love the darks, the blues. Those are great. It's a slick look. I like them. I gotta say, it's funny because I had no investment when they had introduced the Golden Knights, and they've done this expansion over the years. I really have felt no affection or real interest in those. They've always seemed really obscure, but I enjoyed my time in Seattle, and I gotta admit, I already have a little soft spot for them.
Were you visiting Darren when you were doing that, or just?
Yeah, I went out to Darren in Seattle for his wedding, and there with all my friends, and had a really great time, and toured around a little bit, and yeah, what a beautiful place. It rained because of course it rained.
Yeah, I went there for iOS conferences. Stayed in the Edgewater Hotel, where the Beatles apparently fished out the windows of the hotel. Well, it used to be a cannery, I think, down there or something like that, right? Anywho. And, of course, native of Seattle, Jaime Lopez has no idea what we're talking about. All right.
Native?
Not native. I moved here.
Well,
El Paso native, are you not?
That's true.
Semantics. Come on. He's more native than you or I are.
That's fair.
We're just tourists.
He can claim everything south of the 49th parallel. It's all his.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so let's get on with this show here. This is it. Fact check. Start off with the fact check. So Mike McDonald is the other comedian I was thinking about who was quite ill over the last few years, but I think he passed away a couple of years ago. But you know Mike McDonald, right?
Yep.
Jonathan?
Yep. Yeah, he was great. I think I saw him do stand-up at one point.
Yeah, really?
Back in the day.
Yeah, he used to be on TV all the time and stuff like that, and different TV shows and things. But and Road to Perdition was the name of the movie we couldn't remember that Tom Hanks stars in, where he's a henchman, and his son sees him henching and has to find out about his dad's work and stuff. And I haven't seen that whole movie either, but that was apparently.
Yep, and that's based on a graphic novel too.
One. Is it?
Yep.
Oh, there you go.
Indeed.
Cool. Alrighty. So let's head into the headlines, and back on the headlines we've got Dorville.
Well, kids, we've talked about it, we've joked about it, we finally know when the Orville is coming back, and it is coming back with a new name. Hulu announced this week that the next chapter of the Adventures of the Orville, New Horizons, is coming on March 10th, 2022 to Hulu in the US. What that means for us here in Canada, I'm not sure yet. I don't know if that means that it's coming to Disney Plus, because that's where we tend to get our Hulu content. But apparently the date is the 10th of March. So that's a long gap between seasons. Hopefully people who were into it will come back. I mean, nowhere to go but up from my perspective, but I guess we'll see.
It's interesting that it gets the New Horizons subtitle, which makes me wonder if it will be considered, we'll know it's a third season, but I wonder if it's going to be considered a new series. See what the UI says. Is it going to say season 3, episode 1, or is it going to say season 1, episode 1? Like, for weird legal reasons, does it move from Fox over to Hulu?
Yeah, I wonder if it's going to be, a little sort of a soft reboot. They're going to push forward a little bit, hey, this much time has also passed for them, and you have to sort of catch up with the characters, or where they're going to sort of go with it. If it's just going to be like, hey, remember last week?
Right.
Why do we all look so much older?
Yeah.
Speaking of debut days, we also know when we're going to finally see the much anticipated Book of Boba Fett on Disney Plus, the limited series that is coming to follow up on the events of season 2 of The Mandalorian, is coming on December 29th, 2021. So just on the edge of making it this year, we will get our deeper look into the ongoing adventures of Boba Fett. Now, as a longtime Star Wars fan, longtime Boba Fett fan, I'm really excited that we're finally going to have something that, rumors for years that they were talking about doing a Boba Fett movie. They were talking about doing, spin-offs, TV shows. I think it's interesting that we are how they're, obviously they did sort of a backdoor pilot at the end of the Mandalorian season. I think it'll be interesting to see how they do that. Hopefully it will look back as well. We'll get the story of how he got out of the Sarlacc, where, sort of what his agenda is now that he's sort of back. We saw him obviously at the end of Mandalorian season 2. We saw him taking the place on the throne of Jabba the Hutt on Tatooine. I'm really curious to see where they go with this series and what it all means.
Wasn't Attack of the Clones of a Boba Fett movie? Oh, that was Jango Fett.
Yes, and yes. I mean, both characters that you stated there are in that movie.
I don't want to talk about it.
You don't want to talk about something different of like, will they go with like a baby Hutt? If people call it Baby Jabba as incorrectly as Baby Yoda. But keep that money train going for the merchandise.
Yeah, I bet you that there's plenty coming. Actually, I did see a friend of mine is a collector of these very, very detailed models called Hot Toys, and they make these super, super, super realistic figures based on popular characters across a whole bunch of different properties. Marvel characters and superheroes and everything else. And I saw the Hot Toys version of Boba Fett, which is modeled after his current look with the black sleeves and sort of from The Mandalorian, and it looks fantastic. But those figures are around $300 each.
Wow.
Now, again, they come with like multiple head sculpts, multiple hand sculpts, stands and stuff like that for them to be displayed on. Like, these are real collector's pieces. And again, as somebody I've known for a long time, has dozens of them as a collection, and they look amazing. Like, they are so bang on. The ones that have like facial sculpts look exactly like the people they're modeled after. It is uncanny. And the costumes are perfect, and the accessories are perfect, but holy moly, they're expensive.
Yeah, I looked them up because I was not familiar with the line, and I saw the King Shark Nanawe one from the Suicide Squad, and it's like $230 on some site. But it looks really good. The sculpt is super good, super accurate.
They really are. If you have time to go down the rabbit hole, they've been out for many years, and as I say, some of them, like the Star Wars ones and the superhero ones, are incredible. Like the ones that are modeled after characters from the MCU and stuff are just, they are bang on, exactly like they've just stepped out of one of those movies. But again, you really have to want to have them. And beyond that, again, if you decide, I really like the Star Wars ones and want to get like the original cast or whatever, you're in for a serious commitment.
It's like, Jaime, do you remember that doll that somebody did of Steve Jobs, which was very realistic like this? And I think Apple put a kibosh on it.
Yeah, I do remember something like that came out probably around the time he died, I would guess.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it had like, you could get it with like an iPad. He came with an iPad and different, same sort of idea. And it was like realistic like this too, John. But yeah, I think they never got out of the Kickstarter sort of phase.
Yeah, I think
cool.
there's been an effort, especially now that you can do, digital scanning and all these different technologies. Oh, yeah. I'm sure these are being employed by this company, but they are hitting it out of the park. These are exceptional quality collector's pieces.
Mm-hmm. But even some of the fantasy stuff, like the Predator and stuff like that as well, they're kind of cool. Mm-hmm. Really good looking.
Yeah, again, they're pretty incredible. So just the level of detail at that scale is it's pretty neat. Moving on, and still talking about the Disneyverse. So Disney made what some people online are taking a little exception to, a questionable move this week by suing to keep the complete rights to all of its characters. Now, that probably sounds obvious until you start getting into the facts of the case. So this has happened a bunch of different times over the past 40 plus years, where creators of all these famous characters have, gone back and tried to seek improved compensation for creating intellectual property that has gone on to be used beyond the medium they created them for. And the line from Marvel/Disney on a lot of these fronts has always been, we paid you, it was contract work, we paid you for what you did, you accepted the terms at the time, you can't come back afterwards and say you want more, you want the rights back because they're your characters, because you created them, these are ours now, basically. They're our toys, they're in our toy box, you can't play with them anymore. Well, they were trying to basically invalidate a bunch of copyright termination notices that they were getting from different creators who were trying to basically do that, trying to leverage either, get the characters' rights back or at least leverage enough pressure onto the organization to get proper compensation. So this case that they're talking about, we have a link to a New York Times piece here where so Lawrence Lieber is being one of the people who is trying to sue to get his intellectual rights to these characters. That's Mr. Lieber is Stan Lee's older brother, and he was a writer back in the day and a creator for Marvel back in the 1960s. The lawyer that is representing this group is also representing the estates of other creators, including Steve Ditko, famously the artist who created the look of Spider-Man. Don Heck, also another famous Marvel creator, and Don Rico and Gene Colan as well. So these are related to characters that they created, including some you might have heard of, like Doctor Strange, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Captain Marvel, Falcon, Blade, and the Wizard. These are, pretty popular characters, the Wizard notwithstanding, although, I suppose he could pop up at some point as a villain in a book. But it's an interesting case where they're basically saying, they're tired of having to fight off these kinds of claims, and so they're trying to basically go after these people and say, hey, you're not getting anything more from this, you can't do anything about it, move on. And it's particularly interesting in the case of some of these because it is the estates that are fighting for this. So, famously, there have been a few cases over the years where, there were some creators who weren't as interested in opening these cases back up, but now that their estates own their intellectual property rights, they're now members of their estates going after these huge corporations saying, well, what you did or how you did business back in the day was not proper in my view. I would like you to compensate us. So anyway, good article, interesting case. I will be watching. I find these cases really interesting. It's a really unusual circumstance, and it has happened over the years multiple times. these cases have led to some real changes in the way that comic companies operate. A lot of creators now are getting more latitude as far as ownership of characters they create, although, I don't know if that's necessarily true if you work for Marvel or DC in particular, because obviously those are parts of huge corporations. But a lot of creators are going to places like Image Comics or Dark Horse or independent publishers, because from there they can own 100% of their rights, and then they can sell them to whomever they like, and then they can license their characters to do whatever they want. So for an example of that, you could look at Mark Miller, who famously did the Jupiter's Legacy that was on Netflix. He's done, he sold his catalog of his own creations to Netflix for Netflix to develop, because he owned the rights, because he never gave up the rights to those things. So, as I say,
so this is the story that Marvel and Disney are suing these to keep these properties, or
they're basically suing to have these cases that are being brought against them invalidated. They're basically suing so that these cases will be thrown out, so that all of these people that are coming after them for these rights and or nullifications and or compensation will basically be told, go jump in the lake. But interesting case. And again, this has come up multiple times over the years for people who created things as work for hire. Obviously, times have changed dramatically. When these people were working on this, comics were, in a lot of circumstances, considered a ghetto of creative arts. Stan Lee changed his name so that he could put his name on the books. These are, in a lot of cases, these were not glamorous positions. I remember interviewing Art Spiegelman, the creator of Mouse, one of the most famous, the Pulitzer Prize winning comic book. And he said, I used to go into bars and tell girls I was a plumber, because there was no way I was going to pick up a girl if she knew that I drew comic books. So I think in this case, times have just so dramatically changed, and what they thought they were doing is creating, funny books for kids. Now these have turned into billion-dollar generating IP. And I could see why you would be disappointed, because there was no clause, obviously, that said, hey, if we take this and do something completely different with it, then, becomes this incredibly valuable intellectual property that you created, that something more should come of it. But I wonder if we will ever see that. I think, it would be very chaotic if the famous characters in a universe like the Marvel Universe or the DC Universe, all those rights reverted back to their creators or their creators' heirs, and then all of a sudden they could sell them to the highest bidder or move things around. Obviously, that would be extremely disruptive to, Warner Brothers, Disney, whomever is doing this stuff when they're trying to plan a crossover universe. So I could see why they're wanting this to be shut down fast. But it does really raise the case of, what is not just what is the legal thing, but what is the ethical thing? I know in some circumstances there have been, that's why they started putting, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster's name on Superman comics many years back, was to give them credit. They wanted more than, obviously compensation is one thing. They certainly wanted to be paid more fairly for the creation that they made, but they also wanted an acknowledgement that, this character didn't just come out of nowhere, right? Came out of the heads of a Canadian and a guy from Ohio. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I just read while you were talking about that Scarlett Johansson and Disney have reached a settlement.
Oh, interesting.
Did they disclose terms? I'm guessing not.
Nope.
But
nope.
Yeah. I wonder if we'll ever know how that played out.
Yeah, I don't know. She was asking for a lot, but
I believe she was asking for $100 million.
Or 50 million, it says, according to the article.
Oh, was it 50? Yeah. I thought I had seen 100, but yeah, I mean, either way, that is a substantial sum that she was seeking. Whether or not she was obviously given that is a different matter, but
sure.
I don't think she'd be hurting for a while.
No. Well, no. Next up.
Well, we knew that we were getting a changing of the guard after this upcoming season of Doctor Who. We knew that we were going to get one last season of Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor. We knew that the showrunner, Chris Chibnall, was also planning on taking off after this new next season. And there was all kinds of speculation as to who that could be. And this week we found out it is Russell T. Davies again. Russell Davies famously was one of the architects of the return of Doctor Who back in 2005. And he did, run that for a little while. He did the Christopher Eccleston sort of reboot, and he worked on the David Tennant stuff. He also then helped spin off into Torchwood. And I think it's an interesting development that he is now coming back to this project that he is pretty well known for. And it makes you wonder what that might mean to have somebody who's come back for a second tenure to sort of see what they might bring back to the table. So I'm curious. I can't say I've loved every moment of Chris Chimble's stuff, although again, I haven't hated it either. I really do like Jodie Whittaker very much, although I haven't felt like her stories necessarily take advantage of her talent. But I'm willing to obviously watch the rest of the run and see how that goes. I am curious, especially because it is going to be kicking off with the new Doctor, what Russell can do for us. Tim, you're a Whovian. Good, bad? What do you think of? I mean, you remember those seasons well.
I mean, I don't know much about him, but I do know that I was glad when Doctor Who came back, because I did enjoy it, as a character and that kind of stuff, and it was interesting, the reboot. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Let's see. Was it the guy who was during the Matt Smith era, Moffat, I think?
Yeah, Stephen Moffat.
Yeah.
So far, he's probably been my high watermark, I would say, because he was some of Tennant and all of Matt Smith, which is, I think, so far my favorite chunk of the new Who.
Yeah. I don't know. It's funny. I've never really been a big, huge fan of the Doctor changing, but I mean, it has obviously, gotten better and worse over time, but, I've always liked the Doctor. The Doctor always kind of grows on me,
Yeah, I mean, the different interpretations. It's jazz, right? Somebody takes the riff and runs with it. I have some Doctors I prefer to others, but even the ones that I haven't liked as much, I've liked.
Yeah.
Honestly, more trouble with some of the companions than the Doctors, frankly.
Well, yeah, and that's another thing too. They changed too, and yeah, some of them are odd, and I mean, there've been some interesting developments. I don't think there's ever been a companion that I couldn't stand. Right? They were pretty tame in the early days, though.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Next up, we have a cast list for the Super Mario Brothers animated picture that is coming in 2022.
Oh, animated. Okay, it's not.
It is animated.
It doesn't make the cast list make that much more sense, but it is a little bit more sensible when we get into it.
So I'll give you the real quick rundown. So Mario will be played by Chris Pratt, Star-Lord himself. Princess Peach will be played by Anya Taylor-Joy. Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny is playing Luigi. Jack Black is playing Bowser. Keegan-Michael Key is playing Toad. Seth Rogen is Donkey Kong. I love that one. Fred Armisen is playing Cranky Kong. I don't know what that is. Kevin Michael Richardson is playing Kamek. Sebastian Maniscalco is playing Spike. And there will be surprise cameos from Charles Martinet, who is famously and has always been the voice of Mario from the video games. And as this article points out, I'm looking at the one we have up from Gizmodo. It says, no, this is not a joke. It's real. So interesting cast list. Does any of this stand out to you guys? Or is there anyone you're terrified of? Jaime, are you in or are you out?
This one's really weird because I don't know. All right, so I know the youngins will be like, oh, well, Mario sounds like woohoo, haha. That's like the Nintendo 64 era onwards. But longtime fans, OG folks will know, well, the only representation you had of voice acting as to what Mario would sound like is Captain Lou Albano from the Super Mario Brothers Super Show from like the late 80s, early 90s, probably.
Yeah.
Real close in there. It's like, hey, Mario, Luigi, let's go get some pasta, that sort of thing. So
Italian stereotypes, yes.
Yeah, so I kind of wonder where, I don't see Chris Pratt necessarily being an obvious one there.
But he was in the Lego movie, right?
He was. And he was great in the Lego movie, but he was playing a freshly original character there, which was his. This is beloved icon, although...
Yeah, I look at some of these characters and see, to me, I think it's more important to have somebody who's an experienced voice actor play a character in an animated show, right? Like Charlie Day, I could see it. Jack Black, I could see it. Seth Rogen is like, you're gonna know it's Seth Rogen, But like Anya Taylor-Joy, why?
Oh, it's stunt casting. That's what most of this. And I'm not disputing that they aren't. They could be talented voice actors.
They're building on the name, exactly. They're building on the name.
But really, that's what they're doing. Yeah, that's all they're doing.
Yeah, and so to fill in the blanks, because you asked on Cranky Kong started out from the Donkey Kong Country series on the Super Nintendo. It was the sort of the grandpa, father, old Donkey Kong one, as opposed to like the strapping young buck played by Seth Rogen.
Yeah. Yeah, now that you mentioned, I remember that character. I just know he had a name.
There you go.
All right. Next up, I threw a couple of trailers up for us to have a quick discussion about. The first trailer that went up was the first look at The Sandman, which is coming to Netflix. And The Sandman is arguably the most acclaimed comic book series of all time. It is
that Neil Gaiman?
Neil Gaiman's seminal 75-issue comic book series, started in the late 80s and ended in the 90s. It tells the story of Dream, who is one of the Endless, these sort of representations of all of these aspects of humanity: death, dream, desire, destiny, delirium. I'm trying to remember them all now. And it is an incredible comic book. If you have not seen it, not read it, rather, please make the effort. It is totally worth your time. It is really, really, really beautiful and interesting and complex and just an absolute treasure. That being said, it has been years and years and years and years and years that they have talked about how this could be realized outside of its original medium. What could they do with it? Could it be movies? Could it be a television program? How do they bring it to life? And now it's finally coming to Netflix, which is really kind of funny, all things being equal, given that Warner Brothers is DC. DC is comic books, and DC comic books is what published it in the first place. You'd think that HBO Max would be a good place for it. I'm not sure how these deals work out. Obviously, they must have gotten huge compensation for the rights and everything else. But anyways, the first trailer went up, and it shows one of the first scenes from Sandman #1, almost verbatim from that comic. It seems very, very true to that first book. We see an occult ritual happening wherein a group of acolytes and a cult leader are calling down. They're going to capture death themselves, and they perform this ritual. And instead of pulling death down and imprisoning death, they end up capturing, imprisoning Dream. And as I say, it is really, really, really close to shot for shot, scene for scene, panel for panel, what we see in the first issue of Sandman, which gives me incredibly high hopes that we're going to get a faithful adaptation to a degree of the comic. And I must say, I'm curious, given that I don't think either of you have ever read the property, what your impressions were just based on that taste.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It did sort of lay out the sort of foundation of it,
Mm-hmm.
And when I watched it, it was just sort of interesting. But again, I've seen the Sandman covers over the years. I've never really read it. I know you were a huge fan of it growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so it's an interesting thing. I've always wanted to go. I mean, when you went into even as an artist going into a comic book store with you over the years, the Sandman covers always stood out as something amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Dave
you know?
McKean is an absolute genius. He did every cover for every issue, and he is an incredible visual artist.
Yeah, so I don't know if he again. I was wondered if the cover translated into the story, or you know, in terms of the look and feel and quality of it, right? So
it was an interesting series in that light, just because they had a rotating series of artists. It wasn't just one writer and one artist throughout the whole thing. It was quite a number of different artists that worked with Neil on the books, and each sort of artist brought something different and told different aspects, but I think that was kind of the point. It was supposed to be telling different dreams, right? Different stories, different views, different dreams. It actually really kind of worked with the storytelling style. So it was really actually kind of, some series really benefit from continuity. You know, when you start at the beginning and you get to the end, you know, Why the Last Man, Pia Guerra drew most of it, not all of it, but very much most of it. Preacher, Steve Dillon drew, almost all of the Preacher stories. In this case, I think it was actually a much better thing that there was different artists, because it really did accentuate the differences between the chapters and the parts of the story.
Right.
Jaime, what did you think?
I'm not familiar with the property, but when I see Tywin Lannister in the trailer, I'm like, all right, sign me up. This dude usually does good stuff. So
Charles Dance is an incredible actor. He was, I think, the best actor on Game of Thrones. So that, yeah, right. I think that's a real sales pitch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
He doesn't tie himself to crap very much.
Yeah. That was a seller for me too.
Yeah. I must admit, I'm really curious to see this now. I mean, I knew that it was coming, I knew that it was in development, but now my interest level has shot through the roof. I think that's probably the property to which I'm most excited coming to television over the next while.
You're not afraid of it like I am the Foundation?
Well, we'll talk about Foundation later in this episode, but yeah, I guess that's the thing. If you love something like this, you always do worry that somebody will take it and go a direction you're not comfortable with. Although I feel like Neil himself is pretty involved with this, as well as, you know, seeing this and knowing that this is very close, I think gives me hope that maybe they're on the right track. Too bad they did not give us a date. They literally just put this out saying coming soon. But yeah, my appetite is whet for sure. The other trailer we got was a more fulsome trailer for Stranger Things Season 4. We had gotten one before that was very much a teaser trailer. And this one is also a teaser, but it actually has a little bit more of the characters. Still not a lot to determine in there. Any thoughts on this one?
I was a little confused because it seemed like a totally different kind of series, you know? The first part's, you know, more like a haunted mansion sort of thing, until you get the grandfather clock at the end that seems to transition into the upside down.
Mm-hmm.
So at least they're trying new things, though, right? Like, that's definitely got some 80s vibe to it still, a different kind of 80s movie, but I don't know. I've enjoyed Stranger Things to varying degrees.
You can't say they didn't work on it for a while. They've been filming / making this for years now. It's been 2.5 years, I think, since the last season.
Yeah, all of these kids probably have the Norelco razor out in between each take because their beards need to be shorn clean again. Yeah,
it was interesting. I mean, you know, the kids have grown up and they've got this backstory that they kind of paint with the house that they go to investigate. You know,
mm-hmm.
I didn't quite get the upside down in the trailer. Did you, Jaime?
It's at the very end when they show the grandfather clock just kind of mysteriously there, and then it like turns blue. The whole background turns blue, and you see the weird organic roots or something growing on it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And the almost like I don't know, I forget what it is in the upside down. It's like ash or snow kind of particles falling from the sky all over the place.
Yeah, it really didn't show many of the characters other than the one that does the Sherlock Holmes impression and the older boy. But like, did we see all the other characters, or do we know they're all coming back? Or
yeah, everybody's back.
Everybody's back.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, as Jaime pointed out, they're all adults now. But yeah,
are they adults?
No,
in terms of age?
That's just what it feels like. Again, the problem
well, it's
with
like the Harry Potter thing. They started as cute little 11-year-old kids, and you know, after a few years, they're like strapping young teenagers, right? So,
yeah, I genuinely, I haven't looked up all their ages, but I would not be surprised if a few of them were, pushing adulthood.
Yeah. Well, Well, one of them's in Free Guy, right? He plays a character in Free Guy.
Which
The movie we just saw in New Brunswick.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to remember which one. Oh, Joe Keery. Yes, Joe Keery. Yeah, I think he is an adult because he was older. Yes.
Yeah. He was already like high schoolish kid in the first series, right?
Yep.
Because he had a car and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, and I think he's graduated in the most recent season that was on season 3.
Mm-hmm. All right. We throw over to Jaime for one story.
One we've got here is the very first almost teaser shot that shows you nothing but gets you hyped of The Last of Us. So HBO's TV series starring Pedro Pascal and Lady Mormont. I forgot her name. I know it's in there. Bella Ramsey as the Joel and Ellie characters from The Last of Us game. It's a zombie apocalypse kind of thing, but with spores and fungus that's causing the infection. So it looks good so far. I mean, I'm like, yeah, it kind of looks like the video game from this angle. You just see the two main characters sort of looking out on a field at like a crashed airplane or something in the post-apocalyptic world they live in.
Cool.
Yeah.
I look forward to it. I haven't seen I've never played the game, and I know it's quite popular with people, right? So, is that PlayStation or is it both PlayStation and Xbox?
PlayStation. Pretty sure PlayStation only because it's a Naughty Dog, which is a second-party title. Studio, if I'm not mistaken. So.
Well, no, I think they're owned by Sony.
Are they first party now? Okay, I thought they. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right, I just did a quick look. Only 2 members of the cast are under the age of 18 of Stranger Things.
Okay.
Noah Schnapp and Millie Bobby Brown. They're the only ones underage, and she'll be 18 in February, and he's only 16. But everybody else, Finn Wolfhard and Galen Matarazzo and Caleb McLaughlin and Sadie Sink and Joe Keery and Natalia Dyer, like all of them are all... Joe Keery, by the way, he's 29.
29,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He plays the Hare Harrington, yeah. 29.
Yeah. Interesting.
Oh, and to be fair, Noah Schnapp's birthday is a couple days from now, and he'll be 17. So, yeah, we're looking at a bunch of people playing down their age a little bit.
Yeah. All right. And it's not supposed to be like next year, right?
I think. Oh no, you mean in the continuity of the show? I don't think so, because the last season ends with people moving away, and yeah, I think this picks up like months later, or probably a while later.
Right. Cool.
My next thing is that we're getting a spin-off officially of The Boys. So they had talked about that there was a possibility that they would do this, and it is now official. It is not titled yet, but we are definitely getting it. Amazon has ordered the spin-off. They are the ones who released this news themselves. It is going to be a quote-unquote irreverent R-rated series that explores the lives of hormonal competitive soups and college. Set at the only college exclusively for young adult superheroes, run by Vought. Yeah.
Is The Boys coming back for season 3, though? Do we know?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, they've been doing their social media campaign where they have YouTube videos of some of the main characters, as themselves doing music, like Starlight and A-Train doing their own music videos. And then they also, every once in a while, do these like Fox News, cable news style talking heads shows of like what's his name? Like Tucker Carlson style show that's like in the Vought News Network sort of thing. Sort of recapping what's happened in the world, so getting you ready for the next season.
And yeah, I saw that I follow a couple of the different cast members on social, and they were here. Obviously, Boys is filmed here in Toronto, in the Toronto area. They were posting, like, we're done. They were posting pictures of them out at the bars in Toronto and stuff like that, saying like, we're celebrating the end of the season. Yeah. So hopefully, obviously there's got to be a bunch of post-production stuff on a show like that, but hopefully we'll see it sooner than later, because that is a fantastic television program. And now they'll have a spin-off. Next up, we're getting a reboot of Babylon 5. First, a show of hands. Who here has watched Babylon 5?
Does one episode count?
I'm going to say yes. One episode counts because that is one more than I've watched.
If we're going by that measure, I have seen several episodes of Babylon 5, not in any particular order, and for a highly serialized series, maybe less so for nowadays, but certainly by the era, that's a little confusing. Although I did have a friend in, when did this come out? I'm going to say it was middle school to high school, maybe middle school era, who was like really into it. I was a Deep Space Nine fan, and never shall the two meet, I guess. That's how that worked back then.
Yep. So it ran for 110 episodes and then 7 TV movies, including the pilot. And it was much beloved by the people who did follow it. The creator, J. Michael Straczynski, who I've had an opportunity to meet and talk with a few times, is again much beloved, famous creator, writer, and he is going to be the writer of this project. So people are, I think, a little excited about that it is going to be back. They have not. It's apparently coming to the CW in the States. So again, what that means for us here in Canada, I don't know. CW shows here often end up on things like Netflix or on Showcase or, Space Channel, sort of spread to the four winds. So whoever buys the rights. So whether or not or where we'll see it here, I imagine we will see it here eventually. It'd be interesting. I can't say I'm particularly excited given that I have not seen any, but I do know that this is something that a lot of people are sort of way in on. So I don't know if this is inspiring me to want to go see it or not. I'm probably inclined to say no. It always looked like the sort of cheap knockoff version of Deep Space Nine to me. The graphic elements never looked quite as sharp. The costumes and the makeup never looked quite as sharp. It always just felt like the dollar store version of Deep Space Nine to me. But again, I know that is obviously a biased view that is not shared by everyone. So
yeah, I think I might have watched the pilot now that you say that. But yeah, and I think I don't know that I can't think of a single episode that I made it all the way through. Like I might have watched it on flipped by and watched a bit of it, but it just never. I mean, a bunch of guys stuck in the middle of a space somewhere, having adventures. It sounds like like you said, it sounds like Deep Space Nine, and the question is like, why would I watch that? And yet I did. So, and it's funny. I interviewed somebody on the other podcast, Hero's Journey, and we always ask them, whether they like Star Trek or Star Wars, and we've had one guy answer Doctor Who, and the last person we interviewed for the end of the season show said Babylon 5 and defended it. So I don't know. I guess it does have its audience, right? So
well, you can at them and tell them that more is coming.
Oh, I'm sure they know. Yeah.
Yep. Last up. We'll wrap up our headlines with this one. So I have the story from reputable news source TMZ, but it has been around on a whole bunch of different platforms that William Shatner, 90-year-old William Shatner, is going up in space on the Jeff Bezos phallus rocket. And he is, apparently going to Captain Kirk is actually going to space. This trip, should it come to pass, is going to be the oldest person ever to go to space. And apparently he is going up in October. So stay tuned, folks. Could this finally be the end of Captain Kirk?
Oh, man. Can you imagine if we end up jinxing it and that ends up happening? Oh, my God.
Gorns? Like, is he going to encounter a Gorn or something?
Will he enter the Nexus?
Maybe that's what he's counting on. He's going to get up there and then he can do that. I don't know. It's something.
I mean, he's the second guy on Star Trek to actually make it to space, right?
Yeah. Well, in fairness, James Doohan's ashes are floating around out there somewhere too.
That's what I meant. Yeah. He's the second guy.
Yeah,
so, James Doohan got there first, but.
Yep.
Alrighty. Well, guess what, kids? It's that time of the show when we switch our gears and start talking about Star Trek. This time we're doing Lower Decks, Season 2, Episode 8, Excretus. Excretus?
Excretus, yes.
I, Excretus, yes. Starring Boymes, Becky, Rutherford, and Tendi. So.
Yep. Yeah, I just love the idea of calling Beckett Mariner Becky. Since that came up a few episodes back, I do that in my notes now. I call her Becky. It makes me laugh. So we're going to try something a little different this week. We'd love your feedback, but we thought maybe we'd try doing a little bit of a different recap. So I'm going to sort of hit the high notes here, and then we're all going to weigh in. So broadly, this episode is about the crew having to go through a series of drills that are supposed to test their abilities. The wrinkle on this is that the crew is getting their roles flipped. So the lower decks crew are getting to try out being captains and chief medical officers and chief engineers and things like that. And the senior officers are going to be tasked with all the different, occasionally mindless, menial, frustrating tasks that are given to the lower deckers. And so we get introduced to this character. Her name is Shari. Shari is played by Aisha Tyler, whom I love deeply and truly from her role on Archer and so many other things. And she is the drill administrator. She basically sets them up with these hollow pods. They're supposed to go in, they're supposed to do these missions, and is supposed to test, evaluate the ship. And each one of these adventures is not each one, but a lot of them are based on very famous Trek moments. So right,
and they get a score like out of 100%.
That's right. And so they're being scored and evaluated.
They can see each other. Yeah, exactly.
And so each in turn, we get to see Mariner do some, we get to see Tendi do some, we get to see Rutherford do some. And we get to see Boimler do the same one over and over and over again because he keeps trying to up his score. Some of these are fantastic. We'll talk a little bit in our next part of this about which ones we like the most. But broadly, the lower deckers get put into these very funny situations. The senior crew get put into very funny situations, and in the end, they realize that they're kind of being set up to fail. That the instructor was basically trying to prove her worth by finding a crew that she could sort of decimate with these these really, really tough tests, and they end up sort of turning the tables on her and showing her that life out here on the frontier isn't necessarily about the same thing as these drills, and her tests are really not a fair look at how good the crew of the Cerritos is. So I'll kick things off, and we'll talk about some of the sort of the high points we liked. Some of the tests that they were giving Mariner were hilarious. She is so sort of rash and impulsive. She at one point gets one of her tests. She goes to the mirror universe, and her first move is to go and instead of completing her mission to find her way home, she decides she's going to go and try and take over the ship and loses points. And then she ends up basically getting caught and failing her test in pretty spectacular fashion, but fun to see the mirror universe pop in there. I really enjoyed that one. The funniest one, of course, I think was Boimler. Boimler was trying to his mission was basically escape the Borg, and he had to, get away from the Borg, being on a Borg cube. He tries it the first time. He actually manages to do it, whereas as all his colleagues kept failing, he actually manages to accomplish the task, but he feels like he can get a higher score. He keeps going back and doing it, and just gets more and more convoluted as he goes. He ends up at one point taking some Borg babies with him, and he starts taking prisoners, and in the culminating one, he ends up beating the Borg queen at a game of chess and teaching her empathy. All very, very funny gags. And that whole sort of story was very funny. The other one was Mariner doing the naked time.
Well, let's go through some of you've got the different drills here listed.
Sure.
So why don't we go through them just to see what they were, right?
Yeah.
Kobayashi Maru, which one was that one?
So they didn't actually do that. So this was all these things were listed on the board when the driller was doing that. So she was basically giving them all the scenarios. She said, they're all basically named after famous Star Trek episodes. So Kobayashi Maru, of course, is the famous test from Star Trek 2. Time Trap, Triple Troubles from Q to Q, Borg Encounter, Cause and Effect, natural selection, evolution, survival of the fittest, chain of command, hero worship, carbon-based units, naked time. And these were, of course, all very memorable episodes of TNG and of the original series. And then, of course, as they go through these different ones, Rutherford's task in one of them is to basically relive the scene with Scotty and Spock at the end of Star Trek II. And he can't even get the door open, which is very funny. We do get a Star Trek 3 homage at one point where they're supposed to be stealing the Cerritos from space dock and going and rescuing Spock on the Genesis planet. Again, mirror universe, the Borg, Tendy's one where she ends up getting to do she's the chief medical officer and she's supposed to help this paralyzed Klingon, and she thinks she's supposed to be sort of providing him with support, but what he really wants is to die an honorable death. That was really, really funny, where she's offering to use a syringe to sort of help him just sort of die peacefully, and he says, no, take this blade and stab me through the chest.
Yeah.
And then when he falls off the table, the other doctors rush in and say, why haven't you killed this man yet? It was really, really funny stuff. I think they were all really good. The naked time was a real highlight, where Mariner ends up in the naked time, which of course played out on the original series, also played out on TNG. It's a virus has taken over the ship. It has lowered the entire team, the entire crew's inhibitions, and she has to figure her way out of it. She ends up going into the sort of 10 forward bar area on the Cerritos, and everybody's naked and paired off and doing unspeakable things to each other. Yeah. And the thing that finally tips her over the top is when she looks over at the bar and sees a spread-eagled Boimler on the bar, bare naked. Just again, this show really loves to push.
But like the lines like, "Hey, that's an anus," when she's looking in the corner.
The little vignettes, the little mission stuff was so funny. Some of the jokes were really, really, really a lot of fun this time. She goes to a Wild West one at one point, Mariner does, and she tries to find the saloon and she can't, and then she ends up getting stomped to death by a horse. And then we get the tables turned, because when we get to see the bridge crew doing the lower decks jobs, they are thinking it's going to be a piece of cake. They're down there saying, wow, why do these people complain so much? This is great. It's so easy. And then when they find themselves just like the lower deckers, when there's an important mission happening, they're supposed to be having a conflict with the Klingons, and they're basically relegated to, box stacking duty, which had one of the best and funniest lines from the episode. It was Shax saying, if they want us to stack them, why do they make them like this? And all the boxes are hexagons. That was very funny.
Yeah.
At one point, the commander sort of pops his head in the door. The hollow commander pops his head in the door and says, have you seen Q? And, oh, no, the Jem'Hadar, I got to go. And of course, they are feeling what the lower decks crew feels every single week, which is, oh, man, we're left out of things. We're out of the loop. We don't get to we
still have to stack the boxes.
Yeah, that's it. Like, why are we stacking boxes when this is all going on? I thought this was a funny episode. Lots of great Easter eggs. Really, really funny. Some of the scenarios that they cast the different characters, and then just keep tagging back to Boimler going after the same mission over again was so funny. And in the end, he basically ends up getting sort of brainwashed. He thinks that he actually gets assimilated by the Borg and thinks he's Excretus of Borg or Borg poop. No, they put an implant up my.
Alice Krige played the Queen as well, right?
Oh, was it actually?
They brought her back for that. I looked at the credits to see if it was her.
I thought it was her, but I didn't have time to actually go and check. That's great. It's when she leans in and she sort of says, you almost passed for human, just like she's talking to Data when she has Data chained up on Star Trek First Contact. And he says, I am human. And she's like, oh, then you need to drink more water.
Yeah, your skin's awful.
Oh, it was a funny one.
I mean, and also the Tiana and Shax, getting it on during naked time.
Oh, yeah. Dr. Tiana and Shax seem to be quite paired off. There's a lot of stuff happening there.
Yeah, I missed the whole. I don't know why. Must have been distracted by something, but I missed the section where they go back and so Becky and Captain Freeman, they're sitting in the 10 forward, and they determine that, they think that the purpose of these tests are, to build crew morale and get them all, working together kind of thing. And so they go and try and tell the tester that, and she's like, no way, I just wanted you guys to fail. And so they take her onto the bridge, and they do a real simulation, and they fly into like the crystalline entity, and every scenario that Mariner's looking for in the over Tendy's shoulder to see what's available for them to go and show her is like, crystalline entity versus this, and crystalline entity versus that, and the planet being consumed by crystal entity, and crystal entity on crystal entity action, and must be crystal entity week or something, she says, and then they finally go over to one, and of course, the ship's running into all kinds of anomalies, and the tester is Aisha Taylor's character is freaking out, right? So
yeah.
Which is funny.
Well, and she gets her just desserts, right? She was messing with them by making these almost impossible tasks, trying to basically say, I actually matter here.
She
we need to do
gets
this.
boimed in the end because they fooled her, right?
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Jaime, what was the high water marks for you?
Of the different things that they had to do besides the Borg babies being pulled out of the drawer that we've talked about before from like the TNG baby drawer kind of thing.
Yeah.
I liked Rutherford's, Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
Engineering, like he's got to go. He's like, the door's burning. And he finally figures out to use his boots as gloves. But by then it's too late, and you see the Enterprise explode. I thought that's pretty good.
I did like the follow up to that one where he's sitting around having dinner with Mariner and Tendi, and Tendy's saying, I didn't realize it was going to be so hard, and I didn't realize that we were, he's put in these situations and it's so brutal, and he says, well, at least you didn't blow up an entire ship.
Yeah. And also they get at the end of it, they get the bridge crew gives them a new replicator so they can make more than one slice of pizza at a time, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Tendy's like, and they, she says, we can have, what is it? What's the Italian dish?
Oh, pesto. She's excited about pesto.
Pesto.
Yeah.
Yeah. She wanted to get pesto. She's really impressed by that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the lobster mac and cheese.
That's it, with the crusty top.
I didn't understand the line where Boimler at the very end of it says they took so much away from me. I guess he's talking about the Borg, right?
He says they took everything that I was.
So he's so involved in this, in being assimilated. At the end of it, he becomes Excretus of Borg, right?
Excretus, yes, feces.
Excretus of Borg, and he's, when they pull him out of the holodeck thingy, he still thinks holopod, I guess it is.
Yeah.
He still thinks he's been assimilated. Yeah. Like, was that realistic for him?
Yeah,
right?
I think because he did that. He did it over and over again, and that last part got so vivid, where he was sort of taken prisoner and assimilated. I think. Yeah, the idea is that for him it was so real.
What happens is the scenario is that she says to them, once you've done the test, you can't go back, and your scores are locked in. And then that's when Mariner realizes that Boimler's still running the scenario because he keeps going back to try and get a better score. He eventually gets to 100%. Yeah. And they at which point Captain Freeman orders him to keep going on the simulator, and that's how he ends up getting assimilated into the Borg and things like that, and put on the table with and she even blows on his cheek like she does with Data. Right?
Yeah.
But the fact that he's still running is sort of what gives them time to sort of go through and get this woman to change their scores, because they're not locked in until as long as one scenario is still running, which is why Boimler's asked to keep going, right? So yeah, and it's funny that he's the one that manages to pass while everybody else fails, right? So yeah. Because you expect him to be the first one to fail. Yeah. And of course, Mariner fails because she's like bullheaded and just,
Yeah. Another high water mark for me in this episode was when Tendi is cast as the chief medical officer, and she's dealing with that Klingon, and she sort of says, I don't want to kill you. And then she sees her score go down and says, oh, okay, then, well, let's send you off to Stovokor, and basically winds up like she's going to stab the guy with hypo spray. She was just like, oh, I have to do this to pass? Cool. Yeah, it was, again, super funny episode. Lots of just great opportunities to sort of bash on. And again, it was one of those great episodes we were talking about the last few weeks. We've gotten a lot of little pairings, right? It's, it's the typical sort of Mariner and Boimler. It's the Tendi and Rutherford. This one, everybody, including the bridge crew, was in on. Everybody got lines. Everybody got gags. Everybody was together on sort of one big group. It was fun.
I'm also thinking about the fact that, we saw the mid-season trailer, and a lot of that content was in this one episode, right? Yeah. That kind of looked like, they're going to do a Mirror Universe episode. Oh, they're going to do a Borg episode. And it was all the same episode.
Yep.
Right. They fooled us.
Mm-hmm. We didn't even mention the cold open, which was one of the funnier ones.
Yes,
that was actually really good. Where we see the lower decks crew, Boymes, Becky, Rutherford, and Tendi. They're out for a spacewalk. They're repairing the satellite. They're admiring the beauty of the universe as they're working on this thing. Meanwhile, on the bridge, we get this report. Oh, the Bakersfield's caught in temporal causality loop. We better go investigate it. They basically just bolt, and Mariner says, and they left us. And where are we at with air? A lot, a little. Where are we at? And they're like, oh. Tendi says, don't worry about it. They'll be back in a couple of minutes, and we'll all have a good laugh about it. And then the thing pops up on screen that says 6 hours later.
Yeah, and they're frozen. But even when they get in the other ship is stuck in a time loop, and the ensign says, "Oh, I've just got a distress call from them. Oh, look, here's another one.
Yeah, here it is again.
Here's another one.
The time loop.
Yeah. Yep, that sounds like a time loop. Yeah. Oh no, that was so good. Still my favorite Trek so far of all the new stuff. It's so good, and I can't believe we're down to 2 episodes left.
Really? Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, this was a good one, like from the point of view of like all the sort of, the tropes that the Star Trek tropes, the Western world, and they just, they didn't do the, the original series had all these sort of scenarios where I think they would, recycle sets from Hogan's Heroes and stuff like that.
Well, and they were shooting on the lot, right? So they were like, what can we use from the lot to save some money this week?
Yeah, exactly. Well, here's the, the 70s or the 1920s gangster era car and.
Yeah. Oh, look, we have the props from a World War II movie. Cool, we're going to have Nazis this week.
Yeah, but it's funny that, they do that too, but then you also get other movies where they put Easter eggs in the movies, right? Like in Blade Runner, there's a Millennium Falcon, and in the Phantom Menace, the ship from the pod, the pod ship that Dave goes to rescue the other astronaut with, that's in the junkyard at what's the name of the flying character in that movie? The one that Jake works for, Anakin works for.
Oh, Watto?
Watto, yeah, for sure.
Excuse me, I need to go do some shots so that I can forget that I know that.
Poor guy, you poor guy.
All right, are we ready to talk about what if?
So what if Jonathan got what he wanted, which is what Clemmy put on.
What if Jonathan may have had some force-haters to this all building towards a certain direction?
Yeah.
So what if this week was what if Ultron won? What if Ultron won the second Avengers movie and actually had gotten the body that he wanted instead of the Vision becoming the Vision? If he got his body and then had control of the Mind Stone and basically launched all the nukes, killed all the people, took over the Earth, and then started thinking big picture and took over the universe and then started taking over all the universes. And this ties into last week's sort of denouement of the Party God Thor episode, where we see this sort of Vision, Ultron, Space Knight character emerge from a portal, and Thor and Jane Foster start saying, hey, the what now? And in this one, the character of Ultron basically becomes omnipotent to the point where he kills all life in his universe and then realizes that he can actually see the Watcher watching him, and then basically starts to take on the Watcher and then realize that he can actually continue his purpose and go and take over all of the multiverse if he wants to.
And he has a fight with the Watcher, and he pushes them through multiverses as he does. Right?
Yeah, cool fight scene. Really interesting as they're like basically smashing through the barriers between all these multiverses. And yeah, it was.
So I mentioned earlier that when you watch the opening credits, you can see the voice actors who are going to be on the show, and from that you can surmise who's going to be in this. But in this episode, spoilers for those who haven't seen it, there's like a reveal at the very end, which ties into the whole sort of thing that you were saying, like these all tie together, and that is that Benedict Cumberbatch comes back and plays the evil, or the survivor.
Doctor Strange Supreme.
Yeah. Yes, is that what he's called?
It's what people on the net have been calling him.
Okay, yeah. So and the Watcher basically says, "I need your help," and I guess we've got a couple more episodes to go of this series as well, right? So one more
this season.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is to resolve what are we going to do with so the Watcher and Doctor Strange Supreme are going to join forces to go after this Super Ultron, right?
Yeah, and then there is this sort of other plot that sort of starts and then sort of fizzles out, where the last couple of survivors of the Avengers are Black Widow and Hawkeye. They realize that there's a possibility that they could try and find this way to defeat Ultron, even after he's already decimated planet Earth. So they go on this mission to basically upload Arnim Zola, the digitized Nazi scientist, and use him to take down Ultron. They upload him into one of Ultron's hive bodies, and then they think they're going to sort of, upload him across the universe and take out all the Ultrons, but they realize that Ultron isn't even in their universe anymore. By then, he's already moved on to the multiverse. So I guess we'll see in the final episode of the season, maybe we'll get the return of Captain Carter. Maybe we'll get the return of, some of these other versions of these characters that we've seen. I was going to ask
what happened to Captain Marvel in this one. Like, I know she was fighting him at one point, Ultron, before he finds the Watcher. Did she get dispatched or defeated?
Yeah, I think she's basically in that fight on, I think it's Xandar. I think she basically is defeated.
Smote?
Yeah, he basically becomes too powerful. At this point, he's got, the powers of a god. He is not just Ultron, but he's Ultron, Vision, and the Infinity Stones all wrapped up into one package. The fight of Ultron, Mega Ultron versus Thanos was also a high water mark for this episode, where he dispatches Thanos in a nanosecond by slicing him in half with the laser. That was pretty funny. You'd think that Thanos being Thanos, he would have anticipated that, but why split hairs at this point?
Yeah, he just splits Thanos.
Yeah. Good episode, bad episode? You guys happy that this is actually sort of going towards a culminating point and isn't just sort of one-offs?
Yeah, I don't know. It's I have mixed emotions about that, because it is interesting to see that they kind of tie together, but it was sort of interesting to see it from the point of view of individual different scenarios of what if this and what if that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The fact that they all kind of tie together into one cohesive story, kind of takes away from the what if scenario, like where you can have different pairings or different endings and beginnings, but the fact that they all have to tie together, that's a little disappointing, I guess, in some ways, but because it takes away the randomness.
How about you, Hamid? Did you like or dislike the idea of this all sort of culminating?
I liked it, but I think what I had mentioned before, when you were initially concerned about is this going to lead anywhere before this episode came out, I was perfectly okay with it being snackable entries of cool stuff. And I think it still holds up pretty well as that kind of idea, but I'm kind of interested to see what they do here now that they've tied different stories together.
Yep. And we're headed into a Marvel dry spot again, too, because we've got one more week. That'll be the first week of October, and then we're waiting till near the end of November before we get Hawkeye. So we'll have a little Marvel gap for a while, which is it's funny because it's been such a busy Marvel year between all of those different things.
Right. So I have a question for you guys. Did you watch any more of the Star Trek Visions?
I saw one more.
No?
I saw episode 4, which is was it called? The Princess or the Bride or something like that? And
Yeah,
it was,
I watched part 3. I watched the twins. That's all I have had time for this week.
Yeah, it was the Ninth Jedi. Was that the second one?
Is that the second one?
Second one is the one that's kind of more
first
kid,
one.
the kid-friendly one where they're the band.
Yeah, it's the rock and roll band is the second one, right?
the rock and roll
one with
band, yeah.
that, and then the third one is the twins who have they were cloned as dark side twins and stuff like that, and they have the big fight. I have to ask, and so I'm curious, and I think I know the answers. So I'm gonna say, Tim, you watched all of them in English so far. Jaime, have you been watching them in Japanese or English?
I've been watching them in English by accident because I didn't think about.
I've been watching them with subtitles.
You've been watching them in Japanese with subtitles?
Yeah, isn't that not how you watch them?
So we watched them. I think it defaulted because when we put it on, it didn't even occur to me. And so we just watched them in English, and I was like, oh, really good voice cast. Like in the Twins episode, the twins are played by Neil Patrick Harris and Alison Brie. And I was like, oh, cool. And then my son Xavier and I were watching that, and we were like, it's strange that for anime, shouldn't it be in Japanese? And so we went in and, of course, turned the subtitles on into English and turned the voice on to Japanese. And I was like, oh, this is so much better. And...
Yeah. That's how I've been watching it. I've been watching it in. I always have subtitles on, so maybe that's why it defaulted that way, right?
Oh yeah, maybe. But yeah, I must say I actually enjoyed. We watched. We weren't even going to keep watching. We watched almost all of the twins sort of back to back because we watched it in English, and then we were like, why aren't these in Japanese? And we started watching in Japanese, and both of us were like, oh yeah, that's so much better. And again,
I'll
great
have to
voice
check it out
cast, but
because
still.
Yeah, I just went with whatever the default is, and I guess it defaults to English. I'll double check the next time and see about changing the language and see what that's like.
Yeah, no, it seems more authentic. I don't know. Maybe I'm just.
Well, that's what I didn't realize you could watch it in English, but I've been just watching it with subtitles. But the Ninth Jedi is the 5th episode. That's as far as I got.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I figured because they're pretty short, I figured I would just sort of chip away at it when I have some extra time. But I did actually watch a couple other things this week, which we'll talk about when we get to our watch list.
Cool. Well, why don't we get there now since we're at that part of the show?
Good deal.
So, how many are up first?
So mine is what is
Another
that?
Picard song.
It's not a song, but it is a collection of clips here that goes on the premise: how often does the warp core really fail to eject in Star Trek series? So this isn't perfectly up to date. Doesn't seem to have lower deck stuff. But it goes over the failures and the successes of when did they say let's eject a warp core, and notionally I would say it only happened like twice is what I thought, and I was actually surprised at how many times it was successful.
Yeah, it never occurred to me to count, but yeah, it is a trope. When we talk about tropes all the time, it's definitely a trope.
Yeah, it's like
so much so that they even used it with the model in Lower Decks, right?
Yeah, so this does not include any lower deck stuff. But you would think that for something that is so volatile and dangerous, you would think it would be sort of like you have to have it actively held in the ship, otherwise it wants to eject itself. Sort of like, to make an analogy, if you or I were trying to be like a sloth and trying to hang onto a branch, we have to actively try to hold onto the branch. They have their muscles set up in a reverse way where they have to actively try to open their clawed hand. So they can just spend no energy whatsoever hanging onto that branch. I think the same kind of design thing should happen here of like, it shouldn't be, oh no, we are unable to eject the core. It should be like, oh no, the stupid core keeps ejecting. Somebody go put some duct tape on the damn thing to keep it in there.
Yeah.
Like it shouldn't be the kind of trope that it is if you were looking at it from a design standpoint. But that's what makes it fun and exciting, right? Oh, let's eject the warp core. Oh, we can't, it's going to explode.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So my watch list this week, 2 things that I made time for. So this is stuff that I would recommend as watches. I watched the first 2 episodes of Foundation, the new Apple TV Plus series based on Isaac Asimov's legendary, iconic book series. I'll start my thought here by just asking, did you guys both watch this week?
Yeah.
I did not see Foundation, no.
So I didn't know what to expect because I must admit it's never really been on my radar. I knew historically, obviously, what an important piece this was. I knew that there's a legion, particularly of, due respect to him, older fans who were, grew up reading Asimov and revering him. I was curious to see what they would do with this property. I must say, I've enjoyed what I watched so far. I don't know how faithful it is, and I'll throw it to Tim for that in a moment. But I will say, it looks beautiful. It is very much visionary. I found that there was a lot of elements in there that were very unfamiliar to me. I didn't feel like it was derivative. I didn't feel like it was, I've seen that on so many other science fiction programs. It felt unique, which is I think the highest compliment you can pay to science fiction. Whether or not it is true enough to make longtime fans happy, or whether this is more a loose adaptation that is supposed to sort of, take these things and run with them in different directions to sort of spur new ideas, I'm not sure. But I will say that it was good enough watching 2 episodes that I feel like I would watch more. The only small nitpick I will have is that the Empire character that Lee Pace plays, Lee Pace is an interesting way of delivering his lines, and it's a little bit robotic. I don't know, just a little unusual choice as far as the way he's portraying that character. But I thought a lot of it was really good, and I'm definitely gonna stick with it for a while anyways and see if it continues to grow on me. Tim, what were your takes on for Foundation?
Well, so first of all, just on the Lee Pace thing, I remember when you first watched The Matrix, you didn't like the way Agent Smith talked.
To the point where we were Mystery Science Theatering that thing in the theater while it was playing.
So I watched something on The Matrix a little while ago, and it was sort of a video essay vlog kind of story, and it's interesting because the way that Agent Smith speaks wasn't the decision of the actor Hugo Weaving. It was actually meant to be that way because it's supposed to be indicative of the fact that he's in the Matrix and he's part of the Matrix. Like in the Matrix, if you notice, next time you watch The Matrix, all of the scenes in the Matrix have a green tint. Mm-hmm. All the scenes in the real world have a blue tint. Right. So like the colors play an important role in that film as well. But I mean, the way he speaks is meant to be extremely robotic. That said, so I am enjoying this Foundation. I'm really enjoying it. It's a really interesting thing. However, I'll tell you that probably 60% of what's been portrayed on the screen is not even in the books.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This whole story of the 3 emperor people, and like which one's really in charge is like sort of the dad emperor and the son emperor and the baby emperor, but they have all the same power but they're not father, son, and grandson. They're clones, brothers or something.
They're clones, yeah. They're all clones of the original emperor, and they're all supposed to be basically a triumvirate, right? Yeah.
So again, not in the book. That whole, I mean, it's been a long time since I read them, but that was something like that was something you would remember. I do remember the Harry Seldon character. I do remember the whole psychohistory thing, and I don't know if they really covered it very well in this portrayal, but I mean, in the book, he decides, like, he gets in trouble with the Empire because he predicts that they're going to fall apart, and there's going to be like 30,000 years of turmoil or whatever, right? And because the math points that way, and it's interesting how they really kind of position it as the math, and they have this sort of 3D sort of the map surrounds you kind of thing, like they did in the Star Wars, the third series of Star Wars movies, where they had the map that R2-D2 has, and it kind of just fills the entire space, like a holographic map, right? It's sort of that they portray the math that way, right? And that, obviously we're too dumb because Harry can see the patterns, and the girl, the main character in the story, can see the patterns. Again, I don't remember her in the book either, because the idea was that he decides he needs to get these encyclopedists together. He wants to gather these brilliant minds and put together the Encyclopedia Galactica.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, I don't know if that really was sort of brought out to bear in the movie, and
yeah, they made a point of that was sort of his goal was like to be exiled so that he can then do this thing.
Yeah, well, in the book, the Second Empire is on Terminus, right? Like that, or Second Foundation. That's where he secretly does that, right? Because he's afraid that the Empire is going to foil him, right? So I mean that part's interesting, and the whole swimming in the water and the the relationship she has with his assistant, not in the books. And then, because I think
she's probably not black in the story, or never referenced.
Oh, I don't know what color. I don't know what color anybody is in this in the stories, because back then it was it was like 1942 was when he started writing these short stories and put them together into the book, and 51 was Foundation, right? So and that's a long time ago for science fiction, and there was no. It was written out of Asimov's mind, and I don't know where he was in terms of how he saw society at that point in time as well, right? Like we hadn't gone through the 60s, we hadn't gone through the 70s, America hadn't learned to look back at itself. I mean, they had just gotten through a war, they were happy to be alive, but and that's Pulp Fiction in the 50s was very much like that. It was sort of what was I reading? I heard something the other day, or was it you? I think said on the podcast last week that they didn't have to worry about the science, right? Was it you saying that, or where did I hear that? That the best thing about science fiction writers is they didn't ever have to worry about the science. They just had to make up stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we've come to build it ourselves, like replicators and transporters and stuff like that. Anyway. So it's an interesting thing that they're sort of, so the first 2 episodes, spoilers for those of you who haven't watched it, is sort of the discovery or the reveal of the psychohistory, the reveal of the fact that he's gathering these brain people, smart people, and they focus in on one girl in the story, right? Which is a good convenience for. Well,
she's the audience avatar, right? She's the person who's sort of seeing this all through the eyes of, oh, I can't believe this is happening to me, and
and explaining, exactly, as she goes, and she's sort of, in a sense, she's sort of the Harry Potter, the Luke Skywalker kind of,
never expected to be in this position,
Joseph Campbell hero position, right? So I mean, that's kind of interesting too. The fact that Harry Seldon is killed. Spoilers, folks. Sorry. In the second episode, like that was, again, he dies on Terminus. He doesn't die on the way to Terminus in the book, right? So, So, because the second book, I want to say the second book is like 50 years later, kind of deal, right? So she's going to be quite an old woman by that point, right? So, and when I say book, I mean I don't mean the like Foundation, the Second Foundation. I mean the Foundation book. I believe it's in 2 parts, right? And then there's because I remember there's also the space travel part is like, I think I was telling you before that there was a sort of the second story in Foundation is about these space truckers, There's a song by Deep Purple called Space Trucking. I wonder if that's got the idea from there, but it's about, okay, now we're how do we populate the galaxy, how do we get stuff out to sort of like the Amazon of that time, like, and it's about this one guy, this one guy's narrating the story about, he's the guy who's been shipping stuff out to people, right? He's the trucker, right? And that's kind of sort of where we are in the second story, because now they're on the way and it's going to take 8 years to get there, and so on and so forth, right? Because they have to go so far. But yeah, I mean, you gotta. I mean, you can cut them some slack in terms of where they're going with the story. They haven't disappointed me from the point of view of like ruining the story. They have taken some license with it, but I mean, like you said, they kind of got to do that to translate it from written word to something visual, right? It is, like you said, amazingly beautiful, wonderful. The terrorists attack in the beginning. I'm not going to give that one away, but that's an amazing sort of thing. Like, when they first get to Trantor turns up in a lot of the stories. Like it's the center of the universe, right? Or center of the galaxy, I guess, because it comes up. It's kind of like when Luke Skywalker says, if there's the furthest distance from the brightest point in the galaxy is that's what Tatooine is, right? I mean, that convention came from Foundation.
Yeah.
Right, because the whole concept of there being a central, like Coruscant. To me, Coruscant is Trent.
Coruscant, yeah.
Right? Yeah, Coruscant. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, no, again, I think it's a good start. I'm glad they dropped 2 episodes at once so you can sort of get a little more immersed. I think it definitely ends on a pretty good cliffhanger, the second episode. So I think, people who are neophytes would definitely be, hey, where's this going? What's happened? And want to come back for more. So yeah, that's a good start.
Yeah, I gotta say too, the Apple TV shows sort of have a polish, the typical of Apple's kind of work where they they sort of have a bar, like a high bar. They really sort of put together, I don't think I've watched a show on, I mean, maybe a concept of a show that I didn't really like or whatever, but there hasn't been a show on Apple TV that I haven't thought this is top notch stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? I mean,
I've watched less than you. I think Jaime, I think, is probably a better judge of that. He's probably watched more Apple TV Plus stuff than I have.
Yeah, I think they do a pretty good job, and they definitely spend money. It has a particular cinematic look for a lot of the Apple TV Plus stuff. I've not seen this other than trailers, whatever, so I can't really go deeper than that on this. But it certainly didn't look cheap from what I saw.
Yeah, it does have some polish, Whereas, you get sort of things on Amazon, they're like, oh my God, like, could they have spent a few more dollars to make it look a little better, Like some of the documentaries on Amazon are pretty weak, right? They're almost like, high school presentation kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying the Foundation. I think I think it's definitely worth watching. See where it goes. I'm sure there are people who are like true blue, Asimov Foundation fans who are just, throwing stuff at their television.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you always get that with long established, especially literary properties. There are people who are going to love it, people are going to hate it. I'm coming at it from a different perspective. I enjoyed it. I would recommend it, and I guess we'll see how it plays out. Maybe they'll be proven that this is not the right way to do it, but so far so good. The other thing that I've got on the watch list is last night.
Podcast goes to the movies.
Yeah, last night on a whim. Tim and I and my eldest, Xavier, decided we would foray back into a movie theater here in the Greater Toronto area for the first time to go see Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. We have a national holiday here in Canada today. It is the Day for Truth and Reconciliation, a day to recognize the relationship between the Indigenous peoples in Canada and Canadian settlers, and both Tim and I were given the day off. That being said, I was actually working on some Indigenous health issues today during the day, but for the organization I work for.
I'm wearing my orange shirt today too.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think was overdue, and I think Tim and I both feel like this was an important day and a really good starting point anyways towards where we need to get to as a culture. But outside of that, both of us were given the kindness of a day off from work today. So last night we were speaking and sort of said, hey, it's a Wednesday night. Do you want to go see this? It's probably not going to be too busy. Well, we really kind of underestimated how not busy it was going to be at the movie theater last night. We took a look to see if there were seats available for the IMAX showing of the late show of Shang-Chi. And it turned out that the three of us had a 422-seat IMAX theater to ourselves. So for the low price of 60 Canadian dollars for the tickets and another $50 worth of snacks, we basically rented out an IMAX theater for three and watched Shang-Chi on the big screen. Wow. And yeah, it was great. I really liked it. I thought it was a really good movie. I would highly recommend watching it. And, obviously you have to use your own judgment as to whether or not it's a safe environment for you to venture out into the movie theater world again. Here in Ontario, they have implemented a requirement for places like cinemas where you must be vaccinated. You must show proof of vaccination in order to access these kinds of buildings, to the point where when we came in, before they asked for our tickets, they asked for our proofs of vaccination. And we had to show that proof before we could go in. And I never felt unsafe. Obviously, having the theater to ourselves didn't hurt, but never felt unsafe. Never felt like we were putting ourselves in jeopardy to enjoy this experience. And we're rewarded with what I thought was a really strong first, Shang-Chi adventure.
Yeah, and it was interesting. Like it seemed to have a lot of conventions of sort of Japanese, Chinese fight movies.
Yes, it definitely had House of Flying Daggers kind of vibe at times.
Yeah, and it had different. I think a different sort of story plot point, right? Like, because I mean, it did follow some sort of conventional, Marvel kind of stuff, but it also borrowed a lot from Asian cinema too, right?
Oh yeah, no, it was definitely influenced by that for sure.
Yeah. And a lot of Asian stars. Michelle Yeoh was in it, and Simu Liu and Aquafina. They were sort of the novices, and they played the novices in the story too, which was really, really good. Well,
it was interesting because it was a real cross generational thing too. Because Simu Liu, obviously Canadian, he's our guy. Yeah. We love him, and Aquafina, obviously an American of Chinese descent. But they also brought in Tony Leung to play the Mandarin. They brought in Michelle Yeoh. These are two just absolute stalwarts of Hong Kong cinema. Tony Leung, this is his first major Hollywood movie, but I mean, he is the guy in Hong Kong cinema. He is as big as it gets as a Chinese movie star. And yeah, it was a real sort of, cross-cultural, even within the Asian community, it was a cross-cultural thing because obviously, Canadian of Chinese descent and an American, it was, mixed with this, the old school people. It was really cool to see, and it was good. It was a good picture too. It was really enjoyable. It hit some nice beats. Simu Liu is a star, unquestionably he's a star. He was really, really good. He was charming. He was funny. He was heroic. He was really good. Again, Tim and I won't spoil anything. We're not going to get any plot points, obviously, but it was a really fun ride, and it was a nice picture to see on a big screen. There are some really cool set pieces. I found the first and second acts a little more enjoyable than the third act. The third act is, as is in a lot of these movies, sort of a big clash, conflict, which had some really cool stuff, but it was really not as interesting to me as some of the earlier stuff. But yeah, I thought it was a really, really enjoyable flick, and it was. I feel really grateful that we were able to have that experience in a theater again. It was really cool to sit there with you and Zave again and have some popcorn and feel safe and be actually out there. So, I guess this one's for the scientists and the researchers and the medical people who have worked so hard over the last 19 months. Thank you. We really enjoyed the movie.
Yeah. Of course, Jaime has no comment.
Yeah, I think I will just wait the 7 weeks. If I could know for sure it was going to be, 2 people in the theater, certainly I'd go. But for our case, I'm like, I can wait till it's on Disney Plus. Yeah,
and I think it's got to be your own personal choice at this point, whether or not you feel it's a safe environment to do that. And I think we completely understand that perspective. I don't think I'd have felt as safe even a couple of weeks ago before this new proof of vaccination system came into place here in Ontario. I don't think I would have felt as comfortable, even though I know obviously the cinemas are saying all the right things, that they were doing all the right things, that the levels of cleanliness and everything else were being maintained. I still feel like there was a higher element of risk there. I think you got to make your own call during these circumstances, but I'm very happy that we did get that chance. And given that the trailers that they showed us were for the new Spider-Man movie, the Eternals movie, the Dune movie, and the new James Bond movie, all of which I would really love to be able to see in the theater. I don't know that we're going to find ourselves in an empty theater again, so I don't know how we'll play those ones out. But they all looked really, really good in the trailers on a giant 40-foot IMAX screen.
I missed the Dune trailer. Was that before Spider-Man?
I think that's no. Spider-Man was first, and I think you went to go grab a hot dog, and they showed the Dune trailer, and then they came back and showed the Eternals, and then they showed James Bond.
When I went out to get our food.
Yeah. And the Dune trailer looked really, I mean, Denis Villeneuve makes beautiful movies. They really are impressive looking films. And that looked incredible on that screen.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess that's it for another week. So, hey, how many people want to get in touch with you? Where do they find you?
I'm on Twitter as @DevOfTheHair.
All right. And John, people can get in touch with you.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram as @JPKNews.
All right. And my name is Timitra, TIMMITRA. On the Twitcher machine is where I'm bound to be. So until next time, we'll see you in the future.
Bye.
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 You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. This is CNN.
What's that? Oh, I just thought the James Earl Jones thing was kind of cool. Oh, wrong show. Right.
If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter @Spotcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpotcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
Dog has to repeat.
And we're the ones who call ourselves the masters.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir, Bob.
Yeah. Jaime, we came home last night after the movie, and it was pretty late, so Tim crashed over here. We came in the door, and my little 1.5-year-old dog, Sintra, just barked at Tim for like 15 straight minutes. "You're a monster! You get out of my house!"
Mm-hmm.
She was not impressed by his visit.
Nope.
Is that the first time that you've gone over, Tim?
No.
No, I go all the time.
Okay.
I'm usually with Carol, and Carol's like a dog person. Like, dogs just see her and they just like run up to her, and she just, she has a way of talking to them, and she's a dog whisperer.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so funny because, again, I think it was just for her, it was out of context. It was late at night, and we sort of came in, and she was like, "Oh boy, Dad's home. Oh boy, Xavier's home. And what the hell is that?" And just was not having it.
Mm-hmm.
But she warmed up eventually. But yeah, it's just the circumstance too. I think I'm not alone in having that pandemic puppy syndrome, where I know I've talked to a few of my friends who just say, like, my dog is a jackass, loving, sweet, beautiful thing around the house, but so badly socialized, doesn't like other people, doesn't like other dogs. I'm like, yeah, because they never spent any time with other people or other dogs or strangers or anything else, because they were just home for their first, year and a half, getting close to 2 years of their lives. They barely interacted with anybody. Nobody else has tried to pet them or do anything. So now they're just kind of this whole crop of pandemic puppies who are pricks.
Oh.
My little one's never been to a dog park, not ever. And when we take them out for walks, we make a point of walking on the opposite side of the street. We see someone coming, we'll switch sides of the streets because the pandemic. So, yeah. Who knows? Maybe there's still time to reform them.
As we finish up this recording here, I've looked at the news. I'm like, oh my gosh, the Seattle Mariners are tied for the second wild card team with the Boston Red Sox.
The Yankees beat the damn Blue Jays again. The Blue Jays are just choking their way out of this after such a great run, and had to come to an end. But yeah.
I've just been watching the entire AL East and hoping they could all lose somehow so that the Mariners can continue moving up. Yeah. But I still have that, I want to believe, but I'm like, it's the hope that kills you. It's
has me hesitant. Yeah, I think honestly, I feel like it's funny because we talked about this a little bit when the Raptors won the NBA championship a couple of years back. I think everyone in the city of Toronto is so used to having your hearts broken by particularly the Maple Leafs. I think all of us were just in a state of shock that they actually won. And I feel like that's been the prevailing attitude this week towards the Blue Jays was, you know, they were right on the playoff bubble there, heading into the last week. They had a big series at home against the Yankees. And I think everyone was just like, oh, this is still going to go badly. Like, I think we're all just feeling like there's no way this is going to happen. It never happens for us. I think we're all just so used to having our hopes crushed that we were just preemptively being like, well, we'll have them crushed again. And yeah, that's actually proving true this year because they just lost 2 out of 3 to the Yankees and they're pretty much cooked.
It's pretty
so
wild.
Go Mariners. I wish you nothing but well. If you guys can sneak in there over top of one of those 2 stinkers, I have very little affection for the Yankees and Red Sox being in the same division with them for the last 40 years. So if you can take one of those spots, we will happily put our weight behind Mariners and hope that they do well.
Yeah, I have no ill feelings toward the Blue Jays. They see a lot of their fans travel really well here in Seattle.
Oh yeah.
There's tons of blue shirts every time they come into town, so you kind of get used to it. And I don't know if this shows in changing sports a little bit here, but I realized that I saw the news that the Amazon All or Nothing series is getting the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yep,
so
they filmed that all during last season. There was talk about it during the season when they were filming it, and I think they were filming it based on the expectation that, you know, this team, the way they position things with that all-Canadian division, and that they had all these young stars, that this was going to be like let's film them as they, you know, rise towards the top. And of course they did what the Leafs always do. They found a way to pull a devastating loss out of the chance of victory, ended up losing to their arch rivals, the Montreal Canadiens, in the first round of the playoffs, and ending in utter humiliation and just an absolute horrible taste in the mouth of the city. And it's funny because the season, the training camps have kicked off. As you know, the preseason is kicked off in the NHL. We're only a couple of weeks away from the start of the season. And I think every Leaf fan is like, I don't want to watch this. I don't want to relive this. This sucked. I don't think any Leaf fan wants to see a behind the scenes, how was last season. If I see a smile on any of their faces, I'm going to break my television set. Like, I hate the idea of this series. I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that when you have stuff like that. Like, so when they did the Dallas Cowboys and it was on one of our down years, like, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine if they did one on the 116 game winning Mariners team that like everyone was like, this is the greatest team of all time, and then they got knocked out in the playoffs? Like, how heartbreaking would that be to have to relive that? You'd be like, oh, that's awful. I don't want to watch that. That's like that's my idea of a Clockwork Orange torture scene.
The good thing for these series, though, is that they do focus a lot more on the people stories. Like, you know, the games are background. So, you know, they had the New Zealand All Blacks. So I know nothing about rugby, but I was fully entertained by that series because it focused mostly on the individuals. So
I will
if you look at it from that perspective, maybe it helps.
That's the only thing, and I've said this to some of my friends and colleagues who are diehard Maple Leafs fans. I think one of the challenges nowadays is that, you know, so many athletes are sort of programmed from a young age to sort of speak in sound bites and be careful what you say and everything else. I think this is probably the most talented group of hockey players that this Toronto city has seen in 50 years. There are so many amazing, talented players on that team, but I don't know anything really about them. And I can't say that I feel strongly, other than their athletic prowess, I don't feel strongly about them. I don't feel like these are my guys and I'm living and dying by their, you know, I don't feel a connection to them. So maybe this will help humanize them, as you say. Maybe this will make me feel more connected to the Austin Matthews and the Mitch Marners and the Morgan Rileys of the team. But yeah, I guess we'll see.
The Leafs.
Yeah? Is this the year, Tim? Do you believe?
I believe every year, and then they disappoint me.
Yeah.
So.
But losing to the Habs in the first round, ugh.
Yeah, well, they gave a good run.
No.
The Habs didn't go very far either.
They made it to the Stanley Cup final.
Oh, okay. I take that back.
Yeah.
Does that mean that the Canadians could, or the Leafs could have made it that far? I don't know.
I mean, it seemed like it was one of those anybody's year kind of moments, but I don't know. I mean, it felt like things were lined up really well for a deep run for the Leafs for the first time in ages. They weren't going to have to play, Tampa Bay in the first round or Boston in the first round. They were actually going to have a chance to sort of avoid some of those incredible powerhouse teams that they've been so stuck behind, and they still managed to find a way to crap themselves. So hopefully, maybe today, maybe this year is the year. Maybe they'll finally get over it. But I've been saying that since I was 5, and it never is. So I'm starting to come around to the perspective that it just may never happen in my life. It's happened in your lifetime, although you weren't a Leafs fan at the time, but it just may never happen in my lifetime, and I guess I have to be okay with that.
Well, it happened in my lifetime, and I wasn't a Leaf fan at the time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So. You were in Montreal, maybe, I guess, at that point, but...
Well, I just landed in the country, so I was nobody's fan at that point.
Yeah.
I was a Montreal fan because all the kids at school were Montreal fans.
Well, and then when you were in Montreal, they reeled off, like, cup after cup after cup, and then you moved to Ontario.
Yeah.
Well...
There was that.
See what happens when you get us talking about hockey, Jaime?
Yeah, I'm going to watch those intro videos on the interwebs and be like, icing, that's for cake, right?
That's right. That's like frosting, right?
Offsides, that's when you move past the line before your actual offense has started moving, right? Okay.
I keep waiting. Yeah, I keep waiting for you to turn the offsides rule into the one from Ted Lasso. Can you explain to me how that's offsides? No, seriously. Can you explain to me how that's offsides?
Yeah, exactly.
I still don't really get it. All right, gents.
Yeah.
Pack it in for another week.
Talk to you later.
All right.
Talk to you later.
Yep.
Bye.
Gear Patrol calls their new dive watch the best sub $500 dive watch. Full stop. Men's Health rated them as the most stylish solar watch in the game. Who are we talking about? It's Movement. They're leveling up your gift giving with the sleekest watches you can buy and the biggest deals of the season. From their innovative ceramic materials to sexy automatic divers, from ultra-thin dress watches to solar-powered statement pieces and everything in between, Movement is making sure you're the good gifter this year. For your family, your friends, or for yourself. And now you can take advantage of 30 to 50% off Movement's California clean watches, jewelry, and accessories to get them a gift they'll never forget. With fast, free shipping and returns and amazing bang for your buck, Movement makes for a relaxed shopping experience. And with one-size-fits-all watches, it's an easy, elegant gifting experience too. Shop 30 to 50% off now at mvmt.com. That's mvmt.com.
Breast milk science. It's a thing. And it's our thing. We're ByHeart. We're an infant formula company on a mission to get a lot closer to the most super food on the planet, breast milk. Our patented protein blend has more of the important and most abundant proteins found in breast milk. We're the first and only U.S.-made formula to use organic, grass-fed whole milk, not skim. We make our formula in our own factories in Iowa, Oregon, and Pennsylvania, using a small batch manufacturing process that works to preserve the integrity of our ingredients. We ran the largest clinical trial by a new infant formula company in 25 years, and clinically proved benefits like easier digestion, less gas, and softer poops versus a leading infant formula. We were the first infant formula company to earn the Clean Label Project Purity Award. And while we've put a lot into ByHeart, there's a long list of things you won't see on our ingredient list, like no corn syrup, no maltodextrin, no GMO ingredients, no soy, no palm oil. ByHeart, a better formula for formula. Learn more at byheart.com.